Bay to Christmas Island to prisons and detention centres everywhere. Every Monday at 4 p.m. on your community radio 3CR.
We are still fired up, and we're still talking about revolution.
Hello, welcome to the Doing Time Show. I'm Peter. We'd like to thank all the pledges that came in. We made our target.
We did indeed. This is Marisa as well, and this is 3CR Community Radio, 855 AM on the dial, streaming live on www.3cr.org.au. And as Peter said, we made our target of $850, and thank you so much to everybody that have pledged and to everybody that have paid, and people that haven't paid yet, please, if you can, as soon as you can, and pay before the 28th of June, and you'll get a tax-deductible receipt. And so thank you very much. And it's approximately 4:01, and we've got quite a lot of things happening on the show today. First up, we're going to be speaking with Brett Collins from Justice Action. And Brett is going to be speaking to us about prisoner representation being ejected on the opening day of a 4-day conference about prisoner health at the International Convention Centre, Sydney. Justice Health Chair Chris Pulick and CEO Gary Forrest personally ordered that the consumer representative be taken out, as he hadn't paid $2,500 registration to attend. And this is actually at a health conference, so we'll be speaking to him about that. Security staff escorted the representative out. The expulsion was recorded, and, just to emphasise, we will be speaking to Brett Collins about how the lived experience of prison is severely eroded, or was severely eroded, at the health conference. And then, as well, we're going to be speaking with Brett about his attendance, or the attendance of Justice Action, at a Penal Abolition conference in London.
Well,
it sounds great, which happened in mid-June. In mid-June, London, UK hosted an international gathering of those working for social justice in place of criminal justice. And then after that, Peter has prepared a podcast about the Move 9 member, Debbie Sims Afrira, who was released from prison. And she last week, and she's a political prisoner. She was released from prison after about 40 years, convicted in the 1978 killing of a Philadelphia police officer. The 62-year-old grandmother of 9 was paroled on Saturday following letters of support from DA Larry Krasner's office and others. And I'm hoping that we can read out an article from the Philly Mag just before the podcast.
Yeah, we would be able to,
Yeah, we should. So in the meantime...
and you're back with 3CR on your
855 AM on the dial. And and it's approximately 4:07, and we're speaking now with Brett Collins from Justice Action. Hello, Brett. Welcome to the program.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Brett, you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely. We just had some technical difficulties there. Welcome to the program, Brett.
Lovely to be with you.
Now, I gave a very concise introduction, and I think let's start off with what happened about the prison representatives being ejected from the health conference. And I believe that Justice Action made a media release about this. Can you just talk about it?
Well, that's right. Look, this major conference was looking at prison health. I think they used the term custodial health.
Right.
For 2018. It had a number of international speakers and a number of, there would have been probably about, maybe 300 or 400 people at the conference, all talking at the International Convention Centre in Sydney. And so it was a 4-day conference, and each of the participants was required to pay $2,500 to attend. So when we became first aware of it, we weren't first of all we weren't sent an invitation, but we became aware of it. Just a moment, this is talking about the health of our community, of people in prison and hospitals throughout Australia at this international 4-day conference, and we thought, well, how could they possibly talk about prisons and not having prisoner representatives there? So we thought, well, we'd better make sure we were represented, and so they crashed it.
That is absolutely appalling, Brett. I can't tell you how shocked I am.
Well, in fact, to be honest, to not be there would have been an embarrassment. There was just down the road from where we are, the International Convention Centre, and I thought if I put my suit on and had an arrogant look on my face, I could fit in quite well with the health department's employees. So, I went and they said, "You're not here, sir." "Why am I not marked out?" I said, with an arrogant look on my face, and stalked past them, took a seat right in the centre of the action, and then when the keynote speaker, Justice Michael Kirby, formerly of the High Court of Australia, he was speaking, I got up from the body of the conference and said, "Judge, what do you think is the importance of having those people who are the subject of custodial health actually present, talking about their own health, participating, and invited to be in the conference?" And he went, and he stood up and said, "Well," he said, "Look, I think it's if you had a conference involving HIV, he said, you would always have people with HIV at the conference." He said, "Look, it might be a little bit more difficult with people serving prison sentences, but I'm sure we can arrange some sort of teleconference." He said, "That's totally appropriate." And then the organiser said, "Well, we have got people who are in video. We have people in the video." He said, No, I'm talking about interaction." So he gave full support to the idea of prisoners actually being there. But after he'd finished talking, and at the first break, in came the security guard and said, "Can you leave, please?" And I said, "No, and I'm sorry, I won't." In fact, I had the video camera running and made a point of getting the attention of the head of Justice Health and saying to them, why can prisoners not be here? How is it that you can only talk about prisoners and not have their representatives here asking questions and driving research? It's not up to you people to decide how health is directed. And so they said, "You didn't register, Mr. Collins." They knew perfectly well that who it was. And I said, "Is it a money issue only?" They said, "You didn't register." And I made sure we recorded all that, and that was so. There, that was the end of that. But it highlighted a really major problem, which is that the service providers, whether it's service providers in other issues inside in business, even aftercare, a whole range of NGOs, they take the money and they don't supply the services. They're not listening to what prisoners require, and they're not making sure that they're actually being guided by prisoners. So that's a really big issue, and it's one which was highlighted by what happened. And we were very happy to have recorded it, and it went up on our YouTube, and some people can see it for themselves.
So let's be clear here. Okay, let's be clear. So basically what you're saying, Brett, is that you attended this health conference that was meant to be about the lived experience of prisoners, and there was a guy in there who had been to prison, correct?
Yep.
Who had been to prison and had already been released, and because he didn't register and couldn't afford to pay the $2,500 to $2,500, he was actually ejected. He was actually escorted out, correct?
And it was all recorded on a video camera, and so that was really the thrust of it. And it was not even in question. The evidence is actually there. So to not have an invitation to representatives of prisoners, to not have people actually in prison by in teleconference, for example, to have a camera there going back to a number of jails. It could have been the jails in Victoria or New South Wales or Queensland, and it could have been anywhere. It could have been all of them, for that matter, and to engage them in understanding what are the issues and what they feel should be presented is essential. And that
absolutely.
Didn't it? Yeah.
And they wanted you to go too, did they?
Well, no, they kicked us out. That's what happened at the end of it. And then after some significant discussion afterwards, it's like very much ongoing, because it's highlighted a problem, a major problem, which is health, or it's legal services, or it's education services. All those services are being paid for by the taxpayer, and they have to be responsive to people in prison. They can't run off by themselves and do what they want. It's essential that they are directed by people in prison, and research is done because
absolutely.
People in prison want that to be done. So that's a really key issue.
So this is quite brazen, isn't it? The health department organised this, correct?
That's right. Yeah, it was all run by the by collective. Oh, that's what by the health department exactly, and so it was really intended to be only a service. It wasn't intended that as part of punishing people. It's intended that people, everybody, in fact, legally, it's required that people in prison have the same health support as if they were in the general community.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. It's so disrespectful, isn't it, that there wasn't even people in there with the lived experience of prison.
Absolutely. Look, it's a primary point, and it just shows you how the contempt that people in prison are being how they're being dealt with, and even service providers who have a legal obligation. I feel they can get away with it. It's corruption. It's clear corruption. And it has to be handled, and we're doing our best to take it on. And I think it's something that is pervasive through the prison experience, that people think that they can get away with taking the money from the government and not respecting the people inside.
And of course, there was the guilty by association aspect when you, of course, were supporting this representative who'd been ejected. They wanted you to go to silence you.
Absolutely. Like, that's all part of it as well. There's no question that this is endemic to the area, right? Whether it's the legal system, whether it's the health system, whether it's the education system, each of those areas are ones where the lawyers, for example, don't properly treat people in prison with the respect they deserve. If they had money in their hand, it'd be a different matter, because government is paying money to the lawyers. There's disrespect involved in the people who are receiving the services, and that's something we have to deal with. But
to pay that amount of money to attend a conference like that, that's just ludicrous.
Oh, look, it's obscene. $2,500 is ridiculous. And of course, it excludes a whole range of people there. So that's really one of the primary reasons for the high cost. But everyone who's at the conference, in fact, they were all members of government departments. So they're being paid for by other government departments. And so if you're part of Victorian Collective Services or Victorian Health Services, then your department pays for you to attend, and they arrange accommodation, and you attend, and that's all part of cost, $2,500.
It's gentrification, really, isn't it?
Oh, it is, and talking to each other, and also researchers working to get their papers up there to publicise all the good things about the department, and not having critical material presented at all.
It's interesting. I was reading the media release last week, and I rang you up. Remember, I said, "What's this? What's this?" And just to give a final quote to the media release before we move on briefly to the Penal Abolition conference that you attended in London. So you say the callous disrespect exposed in Lismore Hospital to dying Marie Merton will continue throughout custodial areas unless the consumer voice is supported and central. And you say we call upon the ministers involved to start the process of change with an open discussion.
Right, and that's we've actually. That's right. We passed the media release into the health department and into the upper levels of bureaucracy deliberately to make sure they understood that this was going out publicly as well. So there's no question that they're on the defensive about what they allowed to happen. Yeah. Miriam Merton. So this is very significant. I'm
hoping that Justice Action and indeed other prisoner support groups can do some more work around this area, and we'll keep you updated, listeners, about that. So moving on quickly to the Penal Abolition conference in London, can you tell us a little bit about that and what happened?
Sure. Well, look, the conference is called the International Conference on Penal Abolition. So it's about the actual, more than just abolishing prisons, it's abolishing the idea of punishment, of isolating people from their community, of that sort of whole level of destruction. So this really was the 18th conference. It was in London. Justice Action was actually hosted the conference back in 2006. We took it down to Tasmania, and it was a 3-day conference down there. So we were sort of seen as being, like, I suppose, elders in the area. And most of the people who went to London we'd met or had some engagement with them. So people from the African American groups out of the US, and in Canada, a number of the lifers groups through there. They're very strong, and of course, because it was in London, the UK movement itself was very strong. And there would have been probably about 400 people there. A lot of activists, particularly from around the UK, but also academics from, as I say, all around the world, and ex-prisoners. So they all came in together from a whole range of groups, and so we had a chance to link up to them, to talk to other people, and hear their presentations. And it was really useful. There were a lot of really good ideas there. It was quite exciting material, actually.
Fantastic, and I believe that there was amongst all the workshop presentations and film screenings, you also had a symposium for academic papers focused on what can academics do to support movement organising.
Absolutely. No, but the academics were actually really strong. They were strong, and they presented really good material. There's a fellow, a guy called Michael Quill, coming out of the University of San Francisco, I think it was, California. And so he presented just such a compelling argument about how rather than utopian to think in terms of people no longer being put in prison, that in fact it's outrageous that they do put the people in prison whom they do put in there. He said he made the point that there's so much crime generally in the community that few people who are arrested and put aside are being treated really outrageously. That there's so many people who are disadvantaged who are put inside prison, and all these other people are getting away with a whole range of different crimes. And it just the way he presented it was just so compelling.
That's fantastic.
So, and when you realise, and what's really happening is that there are like billions of dollars being spent on imprisonment, and we've got 45,000 people at the moment around Australia sitting in jails and costing, about $100,000 a person. So it's a major industry, and then people in prison have sort of been there for some of them for many years, and they sort of almost accepting their role as being sitting in prison instead of being with their families. So it's a whole big industry, and where people are almost stereotyped as being too dangerous to be in the community, whereas of course they normally are, except they can they're put away for a period. So it was just good to be able to stand back and look at the whole question of why are we imprisoning people? How could they justify it? And how could the money be spent elsewhere? The community, instead of sapping all the money that could be used in education or housing, public housing. Instead they have this other public housing, which is a prison. So
absolutely,
just the whole argument. So it was really excellently put together and very useful. And we even at the end of the conference, there was a statement read on behalf of Australian prisoners, which was actually quite a compelling argument about involvement. And that was a good thing to have that statement end the conference.
Absolutely, and in fact, I'm just looking at it. It sounds really interesting. I'd love to go next time. It's got like a whole lot of streams of resisting, questioning, and in fact, last week you might want to hear have a listen to the podcast for the Doing Time show. We had Mark Johnson coming in from London MBE to talk about the offending, the offenders forming peer support programs. And so we had him in last week and talking about Claire Sepping's research around the Churchill Fellowship. Yeah.
Exactly the sort of thing that's needed. That's excellent. That's so pleased to hear that.
We should get one happening here, Brett, like a Penal Connolly conference.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be really very valuable, actually, Peter. Very good.
Yeah, have some Indigenous elders and stuff. That'd be cool.
Awesome. It's approximately 4:23 and you're listening to the Doing Time show, and we've just spoken with Brett Collins, from Justice Action, speaking about a number of topics, namely looking at the ejection of a representative who's been in prison from a conference, a health conference, no less, and then talking about the Penal Abolition conference. Brett, do you have any final comments before we finish?
Well, look, coming back from London, from Wednesday last week, only 5 days ago. And I feel so enthusiastic about getting back into the work there. There's so many things we have to do. So many good people also to link up from around the world. And so just sharing that material is valuable. We'll put it up on our website and hope to excite other people as well. So we definitely shouldn't feel negative about what's happening at the moment. It was definitely a positive message that came back. And so we're getting into a challenging in a number of different areas. But the work we're doing around computers themselves is a winner. And people have said, oh, that's exciting. Oh, we have a right to communication from inside ourselves.
Yeah.
We can actually then email people. And that when we were able to get that message out and explain how we did achieve that, there were many people who said, oh, can I have more? Can you tell me where that information is? I need to follow that through. So that was really exciting. It means that some of those transfer of information of linking up at these conferences really pays off, and that was exciting, and so I came back with a new spirit, new excitement to get ahead of the work.
Brett, that's fantastic. Thanks so much, and we'll have you back soon. Take good care.
Good on you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
And that was Brett Collins from Justice Action, as I said, speaking about a range of topics in regards to a lot of the work that Justice Action has done, and in particular attending a Penal Abolition conference in London. And pretty soon, I believe Peter has a song prepared by Outright, and then we'll go on to speaking about the Move 9 political prisoner that has been recently released. Debbie
Sims Africa.
Debbie Sims Africa.
Help 3CR support the rights of Indigenous Australians.
They mean to save our culture and save our dreams, our footprints, dreams, our songline, and keep our culture going strong.
Of course, a lot of the Aboriginals, having been stolen, were put into state care, and also others.
Recognition of what our people have been through in the last 200 years, the recognition of our culture in the last 40,000 years, and the recognition of where we are heading into the future.
Welcome to Survival Day, Invasion Day. 223 years ago, the white man landed on our shores.
Subscribe to 3CR and help keep Indigenous voices on air. Call us on 94198377 or visit 3cr.org.au. Subscribe now.
And you're back with the Doing Time show. It's approximately 4:30, and we'll be playing a podcast in regards to Debbie Africa Sims, who was released... Dem Sims Africa, who was released from prison after 40 years. I've got to get to know my political prisoners a bit better. I'm a bit rusty. We better start doing a political prisoner show, Peter, now, at some stage. But yeah, convicted in the 1970... This is actually from Philly Mag. Convicted in the 1978 killing of a Philadelphia police officer, the 62-year-old grandmother of 9 was paroled on Saturday following letters of support from DA Larry Krasner's office and others. This is huge. Black liberationist speaks out after her 40 years in prison. Exclusive. Debbie Sims Africa, the first freed member of a radical Philadelphia group many say were unjustly imprisoned, talks about reuniting with her son and defends the MOVE members still locked up. We are peaceful people, she says. Debbie Sims Africa was 22 when she was sentenced. Her release is seen as a major breakthrough for those imprisoned during the Black Liberation movement. And there was a photograph in that article courtesy of Michael Davis, Africa JR. The first member of a group of black radicals known as the Move 9, who have been incarcerated, they insist unjustly, for almost 40 years for killing a Philadelphia police officer, has been released from prison. Debbie Sims Africa, 61, walked free from Cambridge Springs Prison in Pennsylvania on Saturday, having been granted parole. She was 22 when, with her co-defendants, she was arrested and sentenced to 30 to 100 years for the shooting death of Officer James Ramp during a police siege of the group's communal home on 8 August 1978. She emerged from the correctional institution to be reunited with her son, Michael Davis Africa Jr., to whom she gave birth in a prison cell in September 1978, a month after her arrest. Angela Davis, this is a quote from her, There is an unbroken line of police violence in the US that takes us all the way back to the days of slavery. This is huge for us personally, Sims Africa told The Guardian, speaking from her son's home in a small town on the outskirts of Philadelphia where she will now live. Davis Africa 39, who was separated from his mother at less than a week old and has never spent time with her outside prison, said they were coming to terms with being reunited after almost 4 decades. Today I had breakfast with my mother for the first time, he said. There's so much we haven't done together. The release of Demi Sims Africa is a major breakthrough regarding the ongoing incarceration of large numbers of individuals involved in the black liberation movement of the late 1960s and 1970s who are now growing old behind bars. At least 25 men and women belonging to MOVE, or the former Black Panther Party, remain locked up, in some cases almost half a century after their arrests. And I thought I'd just give you a little bit of an edited version there, little bits and pieces both from the Philly Mag and The Guardian in America. And, you know, Doing Time show we do talk a lot about our own backyard in Australia, but there are times where we do go international and we do talk about other political prisoners all over the world. And this is one of those times because the MOVE 9 are very, very important. People, as I said, they're still locked up. And
some died in prison.
Some have died in prison. And Peter has actually prepared a short podcast about this. It's approximately 4:34. We may or may not have time to say goodbye.
Yeah, we will.
And if we don't, stick around for the Black Fella, White Fella song of the Rumpy Band after this podcast.
Okay, we'll just chuck it on.
Yep.
This is a Flashpoint Podcast Extra. Debbie Sims Africa is a member of the MOVE 9. She was released over this past weekend after nearly 40 years behind bars for her part in the 1978 shooting death of a Philadelphia police officer. If you've never heard of the MOVE organization, they were considered to be a back-to-nature group. Some called them radical at the time. They had been founded in the early 1970s, and they believed in black liberation, nature. They lived in a hunter-gatherers type society and rejected man-made laws, science, and technology. The incident that landed 9 members of the group behind bars for third-degree murder, each giving a 30 to 100 years in prison sentence. All of that took place on August 8, 1978. Debbie Africa is the first member of the MOVE 9 to go free. 2 members of the group died inside of prison. 6 remain behind bars. Here's my phone interview with Debbie Africa, followed by my interview with her son, Michael Africa, Jr. Now, I should mention that Debbie was 8 months pregnant and had her son while incarcerated. When she was freed on Saturday, that was the first time she saw her son, Michael, as a free woman. Listen in. What was it like walking out of prison on Saturday knowing that you were officially going to be a free woman?
It was it was really unspeakable. It was kind of unbelievable in a way because it had been almost 40 years and I just couldn't, imagine, even taking that step if you know what I mean. Not that it would never happen, but it was just so foreign. It was both bitter and sweet and happy and really sad because I did expect my sisters Janine and Janet to come with me too, and it just didn't happen. So as I walked out the door and I saw Mike and I saw, my daughter-in-law, my family and my children and, it was just really overwhelming for me and it was just, it was a happy feeling. But like I said, it was hurt also because, Janine and Janet were not with me and I really didn't understand why, but I had already mulled that around in my head beforehand, so I knew they weren't coming, but to actually feel the realization that they weren't coming and to feel, like I had just left them, was, that wasn't a good feeling, especially since, we all, I just expected it because we all had the same case going in. We all had the same charges. We all had the same parole stipulations up until this last time. And so I just didn't, I wasn't completely totally satisfied with that.
And why do you think it was different for you than them? Do you have any ideas?
I really have no idea. I can't even give you an opinion about that because it was just shocking to me. And, even now I still think about it and I'm thinking, it hits me all of a sudden. I feel happy, 1 minute, especially when I'm with my family. And then it just hits me that they're not here.
Yeah.
And so it's hard, but I don't know why. I don't know why that was.
Now, you were 8 months pregnant at the time you were incarcerated and had your son, Michael, while you were in prison. Are you happy? This is the first time he's seeing you as a free woman and you seeing your son as a free woman. What has it been like reconnecting with your son after he's almost 40? He'll be 40 this year.
I know. It's both amazing and unbelievable, but it's also it's unfamiliar, and it's funny because, when I look at him, sometimes I see things that I've never saw before. And, we were talking about it yesterday to somebody else here. And, he was just saying that, it's the first time he had seen my feet. And while it may seem, like a funny conversation, it's things that we both connect with each other that are just totally foreign to other people. And it was just, it's very emotional, very, very emotional. Sometimes it really hasn't hit me totally yet, but sometimes I just, I look at him and think, and I just hug him and I say, is this real? I can't believe that we're finally here. And my daughter also, even though he was born in prison and I had never been with him, my daughter was only 2 when when she was taken from me at the time of the arrest also. And I look at her sometime, when we're out sitting on a porch or something, I just hug her because I'm like, I can't believe this is here. We're here.
Yeah, and that's like a major family separation. And Michael mentioned that, you aren't the only person who has children and has been away from your children for so long. And so how do you feel? There are 6 members of this group that was named and labeled the Move 9, still incarcerated. Now that you're free, what do you want the world to know about the other 6?
When we were arrested, when we were arraigned, we were arrested at one time. We were arraigned at one time as a group. We were found guilty as a group. We were given the same charges as a group. We were given the same stipulations as far as being denied parole as a group because everything was the same. Like I said, the same charges, the same everything, the same sentence. Every last one of us were sentenced to 30 to 100 years. But I am the only one out. And how is that? How do they explain that? And I want the world to know that there is no difference. We are all the same as far as, being MOVE members, and that it shouldn't be no different. They should all be out just like me. We should all be out here with our families, Eddie included, who has a family of 4 children, who has grandchildren, the same as me.
Yeah.
The same as, and Mike, my husband, he's, the same thing. Janine has a son out here. Janet and Janine's children were, and Delbert's children were killed May 13th. So there's just no reason for them to still be in and me be out. If I'm out, then they should be out too.
You're going to make your first public appearance. Press will be there. Anything you concerned about? You haven't been, seen in this public way in many, many years. What's going through your mind as you prepare for tomorrow?
What's going through my mind? I really haven't had a chance to really prepare in the sense of preparing because I've been just so busy, getting things together and just getting clothes because I have nothing, nothing. But in thinking about it now and preparing, I think I just feel like the strongest thing that I can, try to convey to people is that, justice is justice. And if justice applies to one, then it should apply all the way across the board, especially when you have the same thing. Anytime you have the same thing, then the result should be the same.
Yeah.
It's no different than it's like a law of life, really. I mean, if two people are standing in the rain, one gets wet, the other one's going to get wet.
Yeah.
You know? And so the same thing should apply here. And the fact that whole situation happened because it's surrounded by a civil case. We didn't kill anybody. We hadn't killed anybody. We hadn't murdered anybody or raped anybody or, involved in human trafficking or drugs or anything like that. This whole situation, August 8th, came about because of a civil code violation, a housing code violation, and the judge put out bench warrants for our arrest because they wanted us to come to court to show cause as to why we didn't come to court on August the 5th. And so all that happened because of that. And it's just something that I think a question that has not been asked. But definitely moving forward and, step by step, definitely, my family, our MOVE family should definitely be out here. And, there's no reason that I can think of. There's no reason why.
Yeah.
They're not.
So you're staying with family. I take it you've been eating nicely, much better.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
What was your first meal?
Well, when I got here, my family had everything was, they had a big garden-grown salad on the table, vegetables, kale and spinach and onions and chard. And they had like cabbage and, it was just all kinds of food, watermelon slices and nectarines and just all kinds of really, really good food everywhere. And it was just a really happy time. It was about 50 people here.
Wow.
And it was just really, it was awesome. I mean, it was really awesome. I was just so thankful, for the support and, for my family and my son who worked his behind off like everybody else who worked before the Move 9. I mean, just without let up since he's been able to fight and work. And,
I just want to say,
I'm so proud of him.
I've never seen folks still protesting strong for this many years. Ever, okay?
I know.
I've never seen anything like it, but every time I turn around, it was another one. And they had the signs, and they rolled out the tarps and everything. I was like, oh, ain't no joke. Bullhorns. You got a tough crew there, Miss Debbie. You got a tough crew, okay?
Well, that's why I'm here. And, hey, that's what MOVE is all about. MOVE is about consistency, persistency, until we get what's right, not nothing wrong, until we get what's right, until we get justice, until we get, the satisfaction knowing that we are going to be, treated fairly at some point, and that's what it takes. That's what it takes. Hey, listen, our forefathers didn't lay down. Our forefathers, our people, they didn't lay down. They had to fight. I mean, Harriet Tubman and, all those people that went through that underground tunnel and freed the slaves. I mean, from all the way back then, they had to fight. They had to work hard, and they had to do things in order to get around that. And, it is what it took all that, But now people are commending that kind of fight. They're commending her. They're commending her for being able for standing up for freedom for the slaves. They're commending her for that.
Yeah.
They're commending the Jewish people for fighting against Germany like they did. I mean, they did the same thing. They had to change their names. They had to go through hoops. They had to do all kinds of stuff in order to protect themselves the best way they could against, that kind of injustice. So this is it's a modern day thing, and it's just so different, It's so different because, that's his history.
And I have to ask you this question out of fairness. Do you have anything? I mean, I know Officer Ramp did pass away in an incident. Any words to any of his family members? They may still be here. Or any words at all on that?
I don't personally want to see any form of life killed or maimed or harmed or in any kind of way. I am very sorry for his family. I can only imagine what they've gone through without their father or, whoever they are to him. Because I know what I've gone through, being separated from my own children for all this long, for almost a lifetime. So I can't imagine the hurt and the pain that they've suffered over the years. And, I am sorry for that. Like I said, I could only imagine because I know how I feel, feeling, sort of like that myself, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, after May 13th, all that. So, you know, it was just a terrible situation.
Yeah.
And I never want that kind of situation to happen ever again.
And on that note, Miss Debbie, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with me. I look forward to meeting you tomorrow. Your mother was released on Saturday. It's just your reaction to this major occurrence.
Overwhelmingly happy. At the same time, it's bittersweet. You know, there's still Move 9 members that you know, with the same charges and all of that needs to be out. My dad too. You know, he was one of her co-defendants, and he's still in prison, and he was not granted parole. Bittersweet. You know, we're still waiting for that day too.
And so you have both of your parents. This is the first time you've seen your mother as a free woman. What was that like? You know, seeing her on Saturday.
It was overwhelming. It was surprising. It was a shock, disbelief. I mean, there was all kind of stuff. Happiness. There was all kind of emotions in there. You know, I saw we're doing a lot of things that we've never done before. That we, you know, like I'm learning things that babies learn about their mothers right now. You know, like what her feet looks like, and you know how she sleeps, and you know we've never had breakfast together. Like, so all of these things are just like coming up and happening, and like you don't even realize that you don't know these things, or that you didn't experience these things until you do experience them. Then you realize once you see it, it's like you know that you've never done it. It reminds you to see her walk around the house. And you know, sometimes I forget if she's in another room, and then she comes into the room I'm in, and I see her come into the room. It's like butterflies all over again. Like it actually is real. You know, it's amazing.
Yeah. And so you were raised by other folks because both your parents were in prison. How did you keep your spirits up all this time? You know, and to this day, now the fight continues.
I kept my spirit up because work had to be done, and things had to be done. You know, you don't give up just because things are tough. If things have to be done, if work has to be done, it's not going to get done by you giving up. So, you know, that kind of information and that kind of understanding, I mean, it was tough at times, but I mean, I never really gave up. So, hey, you just do what you got to do.
Yeah. And
so, bear it.
Yeah, grin and bear it. And so tomorrow, which is Tuesday, there will be a press conference where your mother will make her first public appearance. Press will be there. What is the message that you would like to get out to the public?
The message that I want to get out to the public is that I'm not the only child who is without a parent because of the unjust incarceration of the Move 9. You know, there's other people. Eddie, Africa, has children. You know, and Janine and Janet, the two women that were denied, who were my mom's co-defendant, they were co-defendants and roommates for the last 40 years. They were denied parole. They had children too, but their children were amongst the 5 children that were dead, that were murdered on May 13th, 1985. And so they were denied parole, and it's just tragedy. So people need to realize that all these people and all the joy that we feel, my mom and myself and my family, there are a lot of people that are still waiting for that day for them to enjoy that same feeling of amazement.
And you're with 3CR 855 AM.
And with the Doing Time show. And, yeah, thanks, Peter, for preparing that podcast. It really was a most enlightening interview. And, you know, over the last couple of years, we have had a few political prisoners being released from America, but not enough. A couple of Black Panthers. And, you know, the Doing Time show has done some extensive coverage on the Move 9. In fact, we did interview, I believe, one of the sisters some years ago now. So it's really, I found it really moving and really heartening to hear that interview. And there's just not enough exposure in particular for female political prisoners. So it was really good that this was able to happen. So thank you to Pete for preparing that podcast, and I'm hoping that we can get some more coverage. As I said, we do concentrate a lot on Australian coverage, but there are times where it is important to go international, because really we are in a global crisis. We're in a global crisis, not only with our prisons but with our detention centres, and it's always good to link up those issues all over the world. It's approximately 4:53, and we've got a couple more minutes, and I just wanted to thank also Brett Collins for coming onto the show, and from Justice Action, and just to remind listeners also about an event coming up on the 27th of June in Geelong and at the waterfront campus there, Deakin University. If people want to get more details about that, access our podcast from last Monday, looking at Mark Johnson, who is from London, and he actually has begun a program called User Voice, which looks at offenders providing peer support for other offenders. So get up to Geelong if you can, or if you live in Geelong. It's important to do that. Also, just very quickly, because I know we've got a couple more minutes, haven't we, Peter?
Yeah.
Is just in regards, I'm not going to say too much about it, because I don't have a lot of material in front of me, but it is really important to mention that there's a camp and a protest happening about the birthing trees that the Vic Roads wants to take out. They're birthing trees for Aboriginal women. And we need to talk about that and about that land sometime soon. It's about 2 hours. It's up near Ararat. And the birthing trees, they want to cut them down. Vic Roads wants to cut them down to do a northern a route for the highway. And while it's important for drivers to be safe, as Lydia Thorpe points out, Lydia Thorpe from the Greens, who's an Aboriginal woman, she points out that we need to rely on experts to be able to look at an alternative route for the Western Highway, and to really have a look at that, because there are other alternative routes for, that's more environmentally sound than what's happening now, and it really has serious implications for not just for the environment, but also it contravenes the Heritage Act. And I wanted to talk about that because, Aboriginal women have been so demonised and so excluded, not only from policy, but also historically as well since 1788. And it's really important that, that this is talked about on the show, because on this show we don't just talk about prisons, we also talk about the violations of human rights and also the oppression and genocide of Aboriginal people. And I feel so strongly about it that I wanted to actually mention it on the show, and to have people contact the Environment Minister and do an online request to make sure that those trees are not cut down. They're used for cooking and shelter. They were used to give birth with. It's historical and heritage significance, and there are other ways to organise that highway, and there are experts to look at that. It's approximately 4:56, and we've got a minute before we actually are out of here. Thank you for listening, and we enjoyed your company, and come and listen every Monday for the Doin' Time show from 4 to 5 p.m. And we're going to be going out with our theme song pretty soon, Black Fella, White Fella by the Rumpy Band, and coming up very soon is Beyond Zero. Stay tuned.
Okay, see you all. Bye.
Take care.